Today on the Hobby Bench, I'll be talking about ways to bling out your game for Marvel Crisis Protocol. So today I'm just going to talk about some little things that you can do to bling out your game for Marvel Crisis Protocol. Like, none of this stuff is necessary. You don't absolutely need any of these things. But I think these are little things that you can buy for your game to sort of help improve the overall aesthetic and some things that probably make some of the game setup easier or just like flow a little bit better. So first thing I really want to talk about is finding a good game mat. I have a mat here from Grip Mat I really like a lot. That has these nice crisis objectives overlaid on the map. However, I want to say about a year ago, this would have been ideal to buy something like this. But now, AMG has sort of changed the standard mission pool, and they've been pretty vocal about changing them in the future. So the advantage of having these types of maps, I think, is sort of diminishing a little bit. Also, they may not be absolutely precise on the map for certain distances. So I expect, really for super competitive tourney environments, folks are going to want to make sure they double check their token placement. The other downside I want to say is that the token layout means that you sort of default to 2 map sides that are for deployment instead of maybe considering all 4. But, overall, regardless, I really like them. They really help, especially doing a lot of speed runs, trying to play several games over a day. They really do help in quickly setting up and taking down. Plus it's not too obtuse, I think, is from these markings. If you look at it completely empty out, that your eye is sort of drawn to them. But I think once you get terrain up and when you start moving around, your eye just sort of gets to the point where you just sort of ignore a lot of these extra points here. So I don't think they really stand out very much. Now, I want to say too that these are like neoprene here. They're really nice and thick. They can handle quite a lot of wear and tear. This is a good buy to get. And if you want to try to invest a little bit more in your game and having something like this, this is definitely a wonderful thing to sort of really bling out your game a bit. Now, I also want to mention I've got some alternative maps that you can get. This is another one here from Deep Cup Studios. This is a simple kind of material here, cloth material, and it just has like a concrete overlay. And it's nothing fancy, but it does provide a very neutral backdrop that I think works great for in urban environments. So you can spend quite a bit, but I think, investing in a nice mat, that helps out a lot and bring a little bit more to your game. Now, another way to bling out your games are coin capsules. I use penny coin capsules for many of my tokens, and then there's 25 millimeters for others, and I even have some bigger ones for like the 5 health tokens. I ended up using a 25 millimeter punch actually to trim down these other tokens here, these 25 millimeter tokens. Just down for like a really precise fit. What I want to mention is that if you buy coin capsules, just make sure that you measure your outer diameter of your tokens and just make sure that you have those that fit pretty well. But these are what I bought here, just a little bit tighter than you would for 25 millimeters. So I ended up getting a punch just to make sure I could punch those down and get a really nice tight fit for those. But these fit pretty well. I like these a lot. They work very well. They just add a little bit more heft to the tokens. And especially I think for the objective tokens also, because these get so much wear and tear and handling, this is a great way to keep them from getting messed up. And they're pretty easy to put together, and it's friction based for these. So, if you really need to, you can pop these open and sort of gently pry them out and put them in new coins if they get really scuffed up. Now, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here. Yes, these are slightly larger than the actual cardboard tokens. These are really about 4 millimeters larger, but I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't matter. This teeny tiny advantage that I might have for having a little bit larger of a token, my opponent's going to have the same thing. And because someone on our table really has to win the game, you don't really get any advantage of playing these type of tokens. Now, obviously, I say if you mixed and matched these, say if I had all the objective tokens were these, and then I had the secure tokens, something else, and then, of course, if I'm choosing out missions and I really want to get these, you could say, okay, I've got some type of advantage. But frankly, I would not even worry about it. So people piss and moan about it. I want to say, just ignore them. These tokens get used every game. They get a lot of wear and tear. Coin capsules are a great way to keep them from disintegrating. Now, for second edition, the token shape has changed. I think that coin capsules still can work. They might just be a little loose and, sort of jostling around. Lastly, I want to say is odd, but it seems like the new models still appear to have the old token design. So I expect once you expand your collections, you could probably switch most of these tokens out with round ones. Regardless, I love coin capsules. They have a great feel. For some tokens that get a ton of use, there's a great way to reduce wear and tear. Now, as an alternate, you can also use acrylic tokens. And I picked up some for my activated tokens. These are from Litko. And I like these. They stand out quite a bit. They're a little bit different from the other tokens that you might be having for a normal game. So for sure, I know that might draws my eye to that. Yes, this is activated. I even picked up a couple here for conditions. These are pretty good too. I like them more maybe for learning games. It's one thing you have to go out and sort of learn new symbols for this. Nice to see, yes, that I'm stunned or you're bleeding or staggered. So you could use these tokens also. And if you want to make these stand out a little bit more, because these don't really have any printing on them, you can just use a white crayon and that can bring out the lettering a little bit more. But these are some nice little tokens that you can buy too. So I can say that you don't necessarily need these. It's not required, but I think a little bit of an expenditure can add more to your game, especially I'll mention again, coin capsules. The next thing I'm going to talk about for blinging out your game are card protectors. For your character cards, you can buy these postcard or photograph card protectors. It's just clear plastic sleeves. And I'll mention for AMG, they put out a lot of updates to the character cards. And of course, you can print these out in color, but there's paper. And so to have it double-sided, you can work through trying to glue it and do all this kind of stuff. A nice way of doing it is just buying these photograph protectors. They're just 4x6. They're just great. Double-sided, clear. Make sure they don't get scuffed up and messed up, and they're very readable. Another thing I'm going to mention too is these are the perfect size for postcards too. So you can buy blank postcards and put them in the center of that, and that'll add a little more heft to that. So you can, of course, print out in cardstock, but if you're just printing out on paper, you can insert one of those into, and it adds some heft to it and a little more meaty and tactile in your hands. And great way to add a little bit more to your game using that. I also want to mention for your tactic cards too, Fantasy Flight Games, Asmodee Games now really, they have Marvel Champions, the living card game, and they make specialized card protectors for that game. And it's some really cool character designs for certain heroes, and they also have some very nice general Marvel card protectors. And I think these are great, especially in a tournament scene. I know which ones are sort of mine and somebody else. You can just pick up these here. Lastly, as I mentioned too, AMG, they make a lot of updates to their cards. And so you print those out. It'll be a little flimsy. Well, you can just take an old card, put in the new text and this card protector here like that, and you can utilize these. It's a very easy way to sort of switch out your cards and sort of keep them updated and still be rather nice. So these are some things I think recommend. For sure, I'd say buy these type of photograph protectors, these larger sleeves. These are wonderful for your heroes and for your villains, and a great way of just adding a little bit more to your game. Now, dice. Love rolling dice, love it really on the tabletop, but they get everywhere. And a great little upgrade for your game is to have a dice tray. I have a couple options here I just wanted to show you. This here is from Ikea. Actually, it's a picture frame. It's a recessed picture frame. And these cardboard backings, you can pull these out. Ended up just like laying down some felt, just gluing that down, letting it dry, sort of reassemble it without the glass in there. And this is a wonderful dice tray. And they're pretty cheap, like maybe about $8. It's nothing to put together. And I think it looks great on the tabletop. Great to have on the side there. Nice flat surfaces. Wonderful rolling. Another thing too, you can get another one of these dice trays I have here. This is pretty nice. It's leather. Of course, it's got a felt interior. So this is another one I have. What I like about this is that it does sort of pop apart with these little secure fasteners. So it can be stored flat. So it's an easy way for transporting if you're going out to tournaments and stuff like that. You have something like this here. Pretty easy to put together. Rolls pretty well. These are nice little things to have. I also want to mention too, for as organizers go and some things to have on your table, you can also get these little counter holders. And these are like little board game supplies. I like these things because they can just sort of store your various counters you're going to use. They say if you're marking objectives, you need to know which ones they have. Instead of just having it scattered around the table, you can just have it in a little organizer here. So these are small, tiny things. You don't need any of this stuff. But especially I think for dice trays, it's worth investing in something like that and having one. Sometimes you can get those odd dice that just sort of flop up and hit a character at an odd angle. Here it's just nice and flat. You're not going to have that type of problem. And lastly, you always have that rule. If you roll and something pops out, well, hey, what's in the dice tray, that's what you're rolling. You pick those up and roll those again, that kind of stuff. I think dice trays are just a great thing to add to your game. Now, here's a simple thing that you can do to bling out your Marvel Crisis Protocol game. Paint your range and your movement tools. These are quite cool. I think they have a neat design on them. They're just sort of screaming for you to do something with them. So it's always a shame to play with a lot of folks that just have nothing done at all with their range tools. Spend some time and put just something down on them. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Here I ended up painting out these black, and I just put in a simple white color and just a little bit of contrast paints. This is not anything fantastic, but it's better than just a gray piece of plastic. And I like that too, that you can just sort of look over and just sort of see quickly an idea looking at that, what this is, this tool, or just looking through, I sort of know these are mine if I'm at a tournament. Here's even simple. I just painted these white, and then the interior here, I just put like a light contrast paint on this. And a couple touch-ups here and there if I needed to. Nothing fancy. It's easy to do. And honestly, it just adds something more to the game. Just makes it a little bit more colorful. So I just say, spend just a small amount of time, but put a little bit of effort in and paint these up. They look great once you do it. And it's just something that adds much more color and much more pop to the game. Now, obviously, you can spend a little bit more on terrain, and you can have some interesting little pieces that are sort of unique and add quite a bit of life to your tabletop and having stuff like this. But this can get expensive. It can get really costly. And I want to say there are alternates out there are much more reasonable and worth checking out. And I want to say that a good thing to get, an option for these, are cars and vehicles. You can buy these at toy shops, a lot of these. I think they're about 1/43rd scale is a good scale for Marvel Crisis Protocol. And they're pretty cheap. Honestly, I think like this set me out back about $6, just a cop car. And there you go. Hey, that's something that adds instant amount of terrain, instant amount of life to the tabletop. Here's a simple truck that I bought. I think this is maybe about $10. It's really nothing. It's a nice looking truck. Great scale for Marvel Crisis Protocol. And there you go. Instantly a size 3 piece of terrain that you can have. And just adds quite a bit of life to your tabletop. And some of these too, you can get these and sort of paint them up pretty well, make them look pretty cool. That's what I've got here. This truck, is nice and grungy and dirted down. You can spend a bit of time on that, but hey, still it looks cool. And that's something new that you can throw on your tabletop. Just adds a little bit more life, makes it sort of stand out maybe from the typical folks that might have just all the standard terrain that's in the core set. You've got something else on your table that just sort of adds a little bit more to it. And this is really reasonable stuff to get. It's not that really that expensive. I dare say you can spend like $20, $25 and have 3 or 4 pieces of really nice terrain. And this is something to add to your tabletop and make it a little bit different. And there you go. Short video today, but I just want to talk about some small things that you can get, something to add more to your Marvel Crisis Protocol tabletop game. None of this stuff you absolutely need. It's not absolutely required, but I have to say, spending a little bit more on this game can really add so much more immersive value out of it. And sometimes it's a little more practical. I definitely say with these coin capsules, you're handling tokens around and stuff like that. Just adding a little bit more durability to these and the wear and tear that you typically get. That's sort of nice to have. You don't need a dice tray, for example, but it's nice to have. So I say, if you're playing a lot, and of course, you want to get your models painted up and get through all that. But, just consider these ideas too, some small things that you can add to your game. Anyways, hope you enjoyed it and hope you have fun playing on the tabletop.